So, what is the purpose of education? Why are we pursuing education? Of course, in elementary school and high school, it was kind of mandatory. But in terms of post-secondary education, there's a degree of optionality to it. I know it doesn't seem like that. I know it seems like something that you must pursue nowadays to even get the most basic of jobs. You need at least an undergrad degree seemingly, but ask yourself, what's your purpose of pursuing education? What made you choose to go to university? Is it to get a job? Is it to just kind of pad your resume and put a couple extra lines on that resume to use education as a stepping stone to get the job of your dreams? Is education to gain and acquire knowledge, like learn a set of facts and just memorize a bunch of dates, like the War of 1812 happened in 1812, or other types of knowledge that we just absorb? Like, remember what Foucault and Edward Said said about knowledge being socially constructed. So, are we just learning a socially constructed set of ideas and rules for thinking and talking about various topics? Alternatively, are you pursuing education to learn ways of thinking, different approaches to understanding something, different methodologies, different perspectives, different conceptual toolboxes with which you can then study a variety of phenomena and develop your own knowledge related to those phenomena? Or are you pursuing education to learn how to do things? Probably not if you're in this program specifically, because its courses are more often theoretical and less technical or hands-on, the same way a media production program would be compared to a media studies program as this one. But I understand a lot of undergrad students in this department do co-op semesters and work as interns in specific hands-on capacities. And I've heard that they consider those experiences, those co-op semesters, to be some of the most valuable learning opportunities they've had. And there are also trade schools and colleges that serve as places people go to learn a specific set of skills, how to do things and gain the know-how of how something works and then how to work on it. So my dad and my brother, for example, went to trade school for pipe fitting and plumbing, and guaranteed their reason for pursuing that education is very different from my reason for pursuing seemingly a lot less practical or hands-on education or knowledge and much more theoretical. But they were certainly pursuing their education to learn how to do a specific thing. And it's proven to be very lucrative and valuable for them and has led to very stable, secure careers with a lot of longevity. And even besides trade schools or colleges, there are specific job training programs that literally just train you for how to perform a specific job, such as the instructional materials shown to workers of like a fast food restaurant during their orientation days. Are we to consider that education? Is training the same thing as education? That's a question we'll return to recurringly throughout this lecture. Or alternatively, is the process of education to teach people how to be productive members of society? This you can certainly see at the high school and elementary school levels of learning with like civics classes in high school, and even those early grades, like grades 1 through 3, where it seems like they know you're too young to retain much specific information. So they just try to instill more basic patterns of politeness and civility, such as how to share, how to clean up, how to take turns, and other things that are the basis for how we communicate and function in society as adults later on. Those early levels of education are more about trying to teach you morality and instill in you a sense of duty and civic responsibility. So just as pop culture and leisure activities teach us on an everyday basis how to be consumers, educational activities function in our culture as a rite of passage from childhood to adulthood that teach us how to be productive members of a society, how to be contributing workers that keep the gears of society turning, how to be voting and decision-making democratic citizens who are capable of operating in that public arena of civil society. Or alternatively, are you pursuing education to gain important social experience and contacts for career advancement? So it's that life experience part of education, the stuff that goes beyond just strictly grades and academic performance or qualifications, and more the personal and social aspects of the education ritual in everyday life. This is why a lot of people pursue education. They want that social fulfillment. I'm sure a lot of us have made our closest friends in school, either first year university or high school, or in a club, or after school, or at a social event. And these contacts, as we'll discuss a bit later, are paramount for a productive academic experience to maximize the career building potential of those social networks we develop and the contacts that we gain and the opportunities that they could yield. This begs the question, do we just pursue education for landing a career afterwards? Is it that stepping stone that we just see as a necessary step to get to that next desired stage of our lives or careers that we want? Or is it possible that we pursue education for more of its own sake, for individual and collective self-knowledge, for learning for its own sake, and just learning more about the world and about ourselves? So what do you think? Is there a more instrumentalized and utilitarian purpose of education to just get you from point A to point B in your life and career? Or is it more of an exploratory process where you focus on learning and growth in general, wherever that may lead, as opposed to that clear-cut, preconceived destination? Or is the purpose of education to potentially get rid of existing preconceptions and biases? So all these other questions on the slide are more on the additive side of things. You're adding to yourself through education, either your career viability or your social growth or personal growth, or adding knowledge or skills. But in the framing of this question, you're subtracting by being educated. You're subtracting in a good way. It's addition through subtraction. You're subtracting negative things about yourself, possibly being ignorant about the workings of the world, or having some unconscious biases or bad habits that are shed upon being educated, potentially resulting in a more well-rounded person. Or is the function of education intended to develop our individuality and autonomy, to separate ourselves from the crowd, to develop that critical thinking and self-examination, to really reflect on who we are and to build ourselves accordingly? Education, by virtue of the time in which it occurs in our lives as we are transitioning from childhood to adulthood, is a rite of passage in itself, where we develop an identity that makes us unique and individualized. It's a time of experimentation too. Education can be seen as a playground for the formation of aspects of the self. And you can also think about it in the sense that for a lot of people, first year university is their first time in their lives where they're living on their own. That's where you learn to develop autonomy and be responsible for yourself, as you're in charge of balancing your schoolwork with other everyday responsibilities, such as cooking or living in shared quarters with roommates and doing your own laundry for the first time. And this is a time for making mistakes and temporarily relying on too much takeout and gaining the freshman 15, or putting too much laundry detergent in the machine the first time. We learn from these mistakes, as life experiences can be valuable life lessons required for life beyond academia. Because although it may not feel like it, you won't be in academia forever, hopefully. There's a life after school, and we carry a lot of our learned experiences in our schooling with us throughout everyday life past school. And a lot of those learning experiences may not have happened inside a classroom or came from a teacher. So we're not just talking about formal learning in a classroom setting from a teacher. We're talking about life lessons that can be taught and learned by anyone in a much more informal context. Or is the purpose of education to instill people with values deemed important by their culture and society? This is related to the question of education instilling civic virtues in society's future citizens, But it's not just civic values and habits and ways of being, it's a whole array of values and habits and ways of being that reinforce a certain ideology and social structures as they are disciplined into us so that we tacitly consent to those ideological values and social structures and the meanings and knowledge they produce. This is the disciplinary question of education. How much of what we learn is chosen by us, and how much of it is determined by what the discourse allows for and by what ideology and those who are in charge of society allow for in order to keep the existing power inequalities in place in society and culture. So how much of our learning and education and growth is a matter of us just being indoctrinated or brainwashed? How much of education is just us as students internalizing various values and norms and structures in order to fit in and advance within our culture and society? And finally, is the purpose of education to ask questions? Because I've been doing a lot of it so far. So am I being educated in the process, or am I educating? Is the purpose of education to answer questions or to ask questions?